So I've been asked to present information about standards instruction, PARCC assessment. I know you've been all waiting with bated breath. And so here we go. I just wanted to start, honestly, before I began the presentation and talked about the results of the assessment, is talk about a standard. What is a standard? And the standard really is an agreement. And so we have the Common Core standards for ELA, for English Language Arts and Mathematics. And that's an agreement. And it's an agreement, for example, at 3rd grade we teach multiplication. So it's as simple as that. Within the Common Core standards, there is an emphasis on children truly understanding concepts. So they don't just have to know 5 times 7 is 35. We want the students to know that, 5 rows of 7 chairs in each row, the total number of chairs is 35. To really understand what they're doing. And so that's a standard. But what is also important is knowing what is not a standard. And a strategy is not a standard. And there's a significant difference. And I'm going to show you this strategy. And this is a way to multiply. And you can see it's 38, or maybe you can't, but it's 38 times 42, and it's using the lattice method. And by doing it, they say 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 is under the 3. 8 times 4 is 32. And so you do the multiplication, and then you add on a diagonal, and you get your answer, which is 1,596. And the reason that I wanted to show you this, because this is plastered all over Facebook as a strategy, is because we do not teach lattice math. And I wanted to really emphasize that. Quite often you'll see on Facebook, and as a school committee, you're probably going to be getting questions about the Common Core standards. And on social media, they'll say things, they'll have lattice math, and they'll say, look at what the Common Core is doing to our children. And the lattice is a strategy that some districts do use to teach multiplication. And multiplication is the standard. And so lattice math is aligned to the standard, but it is not the standard. And we don't do that. So some of the crazy things you see in social media, we don't participate in. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up that there's all sorts of swirling stuff out there, but it doesn't mean that we necessarily do it. And it can be controversial. So just to give you a background, the Common Core Standards was originally adopted in Rhode Island in 2010. There's about 46 states that have adopted them. They're for standards for reading, writing, and math. The standards build on each other, and they call them a staircase of complexity. You'll hear, actually, you may hear, oh, Ohio dropped the Common Core Standards, which is not correct. Ohio dropped the assessment that they were using. So the 46 states that have adopted the Common Core, no one's dropped them, but they have been changing assessments. So we have, last year it was about 11 states were using the PARCC assessment to assess students on the standards. Another 17 states were using a different consortium, which is the Smarter Balanced. So we as a district, we don't have a say. The state decides that, and the state could very well change its mind, and next year we're using a different assessment, but it would still be assessing the standards. And so I just figured I would give you some of that background, because I know it's in the paper and I know it's on the news. And there's another question that you may hear quite often is, are we teaching to the test? And I always find that that's a trick question. And the problem with that is, if we're teaching to the standard, and the standard is that children have to write an informative essay, then the assessment is assessing the standard, then in reality, yes, we're teaching to the test because we're teaching to the standard, and the test assesses the standard. And so there's that connection. And the reason that in the past we've said that's so bad, you never want a teacher to teach to the test, and that's what I learned 25 years ago in college, that was because the tests then were standardized, they were vocabulary based, they were Scantron scored. The tests nowadays are writing essays, solving really difficult math problems where you're explaining your answer. So they're performance-based assessments instead of just a fill-in-the-blank kind of assessment. So the assessments are different, but the assessments are true in a performance assessment based on the standard. And that's how the assessments have changed over the years. And I wanted to just do a little bit of a deeper dive into a standard. Now, I wanted to talk about the literary analysis standard for a second. Now, there's 42 English language arts standards in each grade level, about 42. And so we're going to dive into one. And this is standard 6, which is the point of view standard. And we did some work on this last spring, and I met with the 4th grade teachers, and they were asking me, well, what exactly do we have to teach when we're teaching this standard? And so the standard is, for 4th graders, the students have to compare and contrast the point of view from which stories are narrated, including the difference between first and third person narrations. And then in 5th grade, you can see how it builds. The students have to describe how a narrator's or speaker's point of view influences how the events are described. So standard 6 in kindergarten or in 12th grade is the point of view standard. It just is at a higher complexity. And so when we study the standard, and I wanted to mention this because quite often in my admin reports I'll say we're studying the standard. So what we do when we do that is we meet as a team, we read the standard, we have really vibrant discussions, and we'll say, well, what is it? What is point of view? And what are different perspectives? And how do we teach that to our 3rd graders, our 4th graders, our 5th graders? What vocabulary do we have to teach them? What's the I'm going to say depth of knowledge 1 or that skill set that they need in order to understand the standard? And then we'll take it to the next level with the comprehension and analysis and evaluation. So the next step in this, and I know I'm going fast, but I just wanted to review it a little bit. So the next step, what we would do is say, well, eventually, what do the students have to produce to show that they understand, they know this standard? And so as a team, we got together and we had some conversations, and we said, well, if we asked a student a question, what would they have to write to show the knowledge of the standard in about 4th grade? And so I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to show you what we would. This is as of last spring, what we expected a 4th grader to be able to do based on this standard. And so they read a story, and their response to it, you can ignore the color coding because that's a strategy we use, but their response to a question would be, the point of view of the story, the lesson, was written in 3rd person. So the kids had to identify the narration. And then they have to prove that, which is the red. The narrator told the story how the cooperation of people makes work easier. In the story, the father was upset that his 3 sons didn't ever want to work together, so he decided to teach them a lesson. He asked each boy to break a bundle of twigs in half. Each boy tried and failed. When the father divided the bundle into 3 pieces, each boy was easily able to break the twigs, proving that when you divide work, it is easy and you can accomplish much. If the story was written from the point of view of the sons, the big idea or theme could have been different. It could have changed to, adults are wise teachers, or working with siblings is not easy. And so this was an example, I know I went through it fast, but was an example of how we would want a student to really put it all together, and we would teach them how to do that. So, this is 4th grade.
4th grade.
So, fast forward. So this was 4th grade. This is before we took on PARCC. And our kids are great writers. They're doing fine with this. So then we take the PARCC, and we get, this past October, were released samples of student work. And that's what we've been waiting for, because we really want to see, well, what does the work look like? What do the students have to produce to show that they have mastered this standard? And so if you read the paragraph, which I'm not going to, it's very similar to what we had discussed and worked with last year. So we're on the right track. But here's the rub. This paragraph was actually one of a 5-paragraph essay. And so when we got this, we said, okay, take a breath. And what we have to do is, as we're studying the standard, we have to think, well, we want our students to be able to write an extended response. Now, our kids absolutely can write 5-paragraph essays. However, they're not used to writing 5-paragraph responses to an answer to a reading question. So this is, again, when we talk about standards and how our kids are doing at the standards, I just wanted you to see what the product looks like. So this would be a 4 out of 4. This is an excellent response that our best and brightest, we would want our best and brightest to be able to put together. This was 5th grade sample. The difference, one of the biggest differences, and why it's not a huge stretch for us, even though it initially looks like it, is because the question was different. It said, read 2 stories. Identify the point of view of each story, so those are 2 separate paragraphs, and then compare them. So our 3 supporting paragraphs, one's a point of view paragraph about one story, a point of view paragraph about another story, and then a point of view comparison paragraph. And then the other 2 are the introduction and closing paragraphs. So our kids, with time, will be able to do this. But again, I wanted to show you what a standard in product form looks like, because quite often you'll hear the Common Core is rigorous. Yes, this is rigorous. This is high standard and high expectations. We can get our kids there, but it's time, energy, effort, conversation, collaboration, a lot of direct instruction, working with kids, scaffolding our instruction. So I just wanted to, kind of review that with you all before I dove into our results. I'm going to take a breath. So here's our results. Now I'm going to slow down a little bit. So when you look at our results, you can see the red is did not meet, the gold is partially met, light green approached the standard, the dark green is met the standard, and the blue is exceeded the standard. The standards are high, so exceeding the standard is pretty impressive for any student to have exceeded the standard. If you can see, we have 48% of our students that met or exceeded the standard. And so that's typically when we talk about, for North Smithfield, for English Language Arts, we have 48. That's 48% of our kids met or exceeded the standard. And we were above the state average, as you can see, was about 36%.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this across all grade levels?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to break it down a little bit by grade level.
Question for you.
Yes.
How do we compare against the other people that take this test?
The other states.
The other states.
So I
What's
didn't
the
put,
average of the other
I do
states?
have a couple districts, so I do have a couple slides with that. I didn't put the other states only because not all states have released all of their data. So some states only release their high school data, but they don't have their whole district data yet. So I will be I have done some comparisons. Rhode Island is not doing great, I would say, if it's a race. They're not winning. Massachusetts is definitely at the top of that, but Rhode Island's holding their own. The math data, we had about, it's 31% met the standard or exceeded the standard, and 25% of the state met or exceeded the standard. One of the things when I look at this, and I was actually really happy to see, although of course I would have been happy to see more met or exceeded, but I was really happy to see that 40% approached the standard. And so those are the kids that, it's not that they, are in red and didn't meet it at all. They definitely have some skills and they're definitely approaching the standard. This is by grade level. This is something I had put together. And when I look at this, one of the things you may pop out, if you look at North Smithfield on the left-hand side, and the red is the ELA. Interestingly enough, it's a trend that is the opposite of a typical trend, because our scores get higher and better as the kids get older. And typically in the state, you don't necessarily see that. We really have a good system and structure with English Language Arts. And a strong system for English Language Arts. What draws my attention is the third grade. We have 28% of our kids that were met or exceeded. I honestly feel that is due to their keyboarding skills, not necessarily their reading and writing skills. And that's just, we were so thankful that we got enough Chromebooks last year in order to give the assessment online. It's a new assessment. Our kids have never taken a test online before and never on the computer. And we did have enough to give it. But, we got the Chromebooks a few weeks before the kids actually took the assessment. So I think some of that is getting used to taking an assessment on a computer. Yes?
How does absenteeism or non-participation impact these scores?
So it definitely impacts it. And according to the state meetings that I went to, they said they looked for patterns of trends for the kids whose parents refused to have them participate. They looked for a pattern or trend if there were more kids that maybe had special needs or IEPs or more of our gifted kids, but there wasn't necessarily one subgroup that actually refused. It was it was a variety of types of students that refused, but it definitely makes it less reliable, the data.
Would it lower your scores?
We don't know, because we don't know, it's the first test on new standards, but we did have some of our best and brightest kids who didn't take it, who refused, and we had some of our really struggling kids not take it, so it's hard to say.
Do you know by grade level how many of our kids opted out? I'm wondering if that could be the reason why the third grade score was low.
No, we actually had, we didn't have a high rate at the third grade level.
We didn't have a
No,
high rate
at the older
opting
kids,
out?
opting out.
Okay,
It was, our highest was at the high school level,
of opting out,
yeah. If you could imagine, once high school kids heard that
Yeah.
their friends were
yeah.
not taking it, and then that spread. I can't tell you how fast that spread, how quickly that
Claire, would
went
this
down.
be an opportunity right now just to talk about going forward and the Department of Ed's position and going forward, and there's really no refusal type of thing?
So, yes, so the Department of Ed absolutely said, or was really clear when they said they don't even like the term opt-out, because you can't opt out of, your spelling test on Friday. You're in a public school setting. By federal law, we have to give this assessment. So according to the Department of Ed, there is no opt-out. So, if a parent doesn't send their child to school, that would be a refusal, but there really shouldn't be necessarily, it's not an opt-out, because there is no such thing as opt-out. I don't know what exactly, I think that that's the message that they told us most recently. And I think that was their message last year also.
Can I ask one more
Oh,
question
sorry.
on that last
Yeah.
one? Do you do any type of collating of the scores or anything to verify that the state reported the numbers accurately? I just keep looking at that third grade and I find that so hard to believe. When we're above in every other grade level by a good percentage, and I understand what you're saying about the kids not getting used to the technology, but I'm sure there are other districts in the state where the kids have never even seen,
So honestly, I would probably agree with you if I didn't physically see the kids take the test. I was walking in the buildings, I check on how the implementation was going, and so I'd go into the computer lab or go into a room, and kids who normally can write, our third graders can write paragraphs. They're great little writers, and they're honestly writing like 3 words in phrases and not using capital letters or periods. Like, my head almost exploded, but you can't say a thing. So I think physically seeing them, I could have told you that even before we got the scores, that it wouldn't be a true representation. Just because they weren't used to, and they don't have the stamina to keyboard.
Again, I just think that would be common in a lot of districts in the state. Did the third grade teachers understand or
So
have an
here's
opinion
the
as to why?
interesting thing with the state was, you don't know who took it on paper or who took it on computer. So, there could be a district that you say, oh, they have great scores, let's do what they're doing, then find out, well, they took their assessment on paper, and they're going to be transitioning to the computer, and so their scores are probably going to drop. So that's kind of tricky. I do know some districts that we typically do, I hate to say better than, but we typically do better than, that they outscored us on the PARCC, but they took it on paper. So it's hard, it's tricky.
What was Ms. Warhart say?
Same thing she just said. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is tricky. And we have to keep in mind, as much as I love data, I love analyzing it, talking about it, having all sorts of conversations, it is one assessment, it's one piece of the puzzle, it's a new test on new standards with new technology. Like, we have to take everything with a grain of salt, and just, it was kind of a joke, because I gave myself 1 week to wallow, in the scores, and I was so sad about it. But after 1 week, get to work. So I would complain for about 1 week that we had low scores. But then after that, it's, okay, let's just roll up our sleeves and do great things for kids. So that's kind of, this is where we stand. And we know at the high school, like there's so many variables, having, because it doesn't count as a graduation requirement at the high school, when NECAP did, our kids put in their best effort. At the high school level, we have to now start having really creative conversations. How can we get kids invested in taking the assessment and really doing their best? And we're gonna have those conversations, and that's going to unfold as part of our plan this year.
Claire, is it this year's 8th grade? It's high stakes come 2021?
So it's 2021, it was actually voted on last week, it was changed because it was our 8th graders. The class of 2020 was supposed to be the first week that, first grade level that it would count, but it was changed last week to the class of 2021.
I have one little note too. Please go for a second. The 8th grade math scores, can I just make that distinction? Can you go back to it?
Oh, yeah.
So if you see in the 8th grade math scores, you see the 13 and the 76. PARCC is very distinct from NECAP, where we have an honors math program at the middle school where our 8th graders take the 9th grade Algebra 1 class. What PARCC does, it has them take the 9th grade Algebra 1 PARCC assessment. So the 8th graders that you see algebra, they were taking the same test as the 9th grade algebra kids under algebra. The 8 kids were taking the math 8 test. We have about 40% of our kids that are in honors math. So we have it's a very fine line of distinction. So you see that our math 8 scores are low, and those are some of our more struggling students where the 76 is the highest number I have, but that's when you're dividing them by honors versus traditional math 8. And in the NECAP era, all 8th graders took the 8th grade NECAP test, so the honors kids were intertwined with the 8th graders. In 7th grade, they're still together. They don't split it up until they take that Algebra 1 class in 8th grade. So that's a unique PARCC twist that we're dealing with in middle school level.
That's okay. I did, I put this slide in, took it out, put it in, took it out, because normally we do talk about, well, where do we fall to some surrounding districts? And so I ultimately just took the names off of it, because what I don't want to do is put somebody's scores up there based on the first year of a new test, on new technology. So, like, these are 3 surrounding districts. There's one district that had a really low participation rate, another district that had a really high participation rate, another district who took it half on paper, half on computer. So I didn't want to plaster everyone's scores up, but if you see, we are doing similar to surrounding districts, and we're actually, outscoring some of our surrounding districts. So we're in the ballpark of, for our starting point. So what's the next step? And if the first thing is to remember this is a baseline. We know it's a baseline. It is what it is, and we want to move on from that. We also want to look at our strengths and our relative strengths. In 4th grade, we had 48% that met or exceeded in math, and that was above the Massachusetts average. So to me, that's a win. So we want to also remember, if there is a strength, it's a true strength, because you can't fake good. You can fake bad. You could have a great student who's, an honor student and put C, or leave it blank, and they could get a poor score. But if a student gets a good score, a positive score, in order to do that, they have to write the essays, they have to solve the math problems, they have to explain their answers. So when we have a student that's achieving the standard or above, you can't fake it. That means they really know it. And so I just wanted to make mention to that. We're in a transition. We have quite a few initiatives, and when I talk about our next steps, we're basically using initiatives, and one of the big ones is our community of practice, and I do try to highlight that in my admin report, but it's time that I meet with grade levels, and we look at curriculum, instruction, professional development, collaboration, working with our standards, what we're teaching, how we're teaching, the level and the depth, sharing resources. So those are going to be really important conversation and days that we have throughout the rest of the year. And also, I wanted to talk a little bit about some roadblocks. And there is one roadblock, and I say it with love to the school committee, but one is our technology. I'm so thankful that we have Chromebooks, but we really need more. And last year, when we were asked how many Chromebook carts do we need in order to take the PARCC, we did not have it. Like, it was like, this is what we need in order to give the assessment, and it truly was. We needed 14 parts. But that's not enough to teach the standards, to teach kids, to give them the stamina to write an essay without physically writing it out first, to actually type an essay, thinking and typing at the same time, to do the work on the computer, to do math on the computer. We do need more Chromebooks. And so I say it with love, no pressure, but I just had to say.
Could I just ask a question?
Yes,
Superintendent, is that in your request, which she's talking about? I know this is new, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but,
It is.
okay. So that your request would cover,
Yes, and.
at least at a minimum level, let's,
Yes, it would be a big step in the right direction, and I know that both Adam and Claire worked side by side on their proposals, and so yeah, I feel very confident that it would make a difference. But, you know, it's up to the committee, and we all say it with love.
thank you, Superintendent.
and the next I just wanted to share how we're communicating with our stakeholders. So first, school committee presentation. We did send home our results with the commissioner's letter. Our principals are presenting to faculty meetings. We had some PD sessions in November, and we're going to continue to build professional development sessions during our professional development days. We, again, are using our community of practice shared classroom initiative days. We're having CIA nights, and those are curriculum instruction and assessment nights. And I had one in the fall for elementary parents, and we're going to be planning one for secondary parents after the new year. And that's just for parents to come in and learn about standards in curriculum instruction and assessment. Why we do it, why we have it, what our resources are for the parents to help their kids and support our kids. And we use School Messenger, which is our email, voicemail system. And the website is always updated. I did want to mention.
Claire, you don't want to do anything, I look at that, and it's very focused on parents and kids and school people that are really involved. What about the rest of the community that I get comments from, the old guy sitting at Dunkin' Donuts who says, look at those scores. We don't have any communication for that guy, you know what I mean? Is there something we can,
So I'm not exactly sure if that guy ever went on the website, he could see information,
But he's
but
not
I
going to.
doubt he
All
would.
he gets is what he reads in the
Right.
newspaper.
Right.
So if you're sitting there, if you were a company, right, you were CBS and you had a drug problem, you would do a press release and try to get that in the newspaper, or you would try to get it out to as many people as you can. Here, we're not getting it out, so that guy still has that perception of the school. I'm just giving you what the
Right.
perception is. And I'd like to change that perception, but they don't see the good work you're doing now.
And I think it's hard, and just like when I didn't want to just give you the scores tonight, I wanted to give you some background. What are standards? What do the standards look like? That's hard to get to people. So if you have ideas, I'm willing to meet with people at Dunkin' Donuts.
So,
and-
Mrs. Arnold, Mrs. Sioni.
Yes.
Actually, John, one of the reasons why, we wanted to do this first with you.
Yeah.
And then, actually, that would be a next logical step, and I think, I know Sandy's been a willing participant in the past, and maybe she'll give us some time in the paper to work with Claire, and so we can put something in the
It
paper.
doesn't have to be a big article, it doesn't have to be, not an article, big,
Yeah,
it's a couple of paragraphs on what we're doing to, do better next time. I know the town administrator sends out an email that says keeping you informed. If you had a paragraph in there, it might, you know what I mean? It might just ease people and say, oh, look, at least they're trying to do something about it.
those of you that have been either around or followed us through the kneecap era, you realize what we did in probably, 4 short years, right around there, 4 short years, from baseline information to taking us forward to being recognized by the Department of Ed on many, many occasions. I have no doubt, although it's a much rigorous standard, I have no doubt that this faculty and this group of administrators will do the same thing. No doubt at all, with your support too.
Just one other thing, I think it's really important for people to understand that every student takes this test. And I don't know if everyone knows that. I mean, obviously the educators know that. And then how that's graded. So we have students who have different types of accommodations and modifications that they're getting all the time, every single class, or in certain classes, and then they're thrown this test where you can't help them, you cannot offer them assistance, you cannot translate something for them, you cannot give them any type of cue or, I mean, that's a big component of this, aside from the technology piece. You know, students that may given, I don't know, shortened tests or don't have to produce 5 paragraphs, they may have to give you 3, or they might be able to do an outline. And there's so many pieces that kids get to do, you know, in their classes so we can help them succeed. But then, no fault of the school district, they're given a test like this that's testing them on things that they might not be able to do. The ELL learners, I mean, all sorts of, I think that's a big piece to publicize as well, that everyone takes the same test and they don't get any help.
We can give some
Some.
accommodations,
Is
there are
there- I
some,
mean,
so
but
it could be a
not-
small group, or it could be
Right.
breaks between, so there are definitely some accommodations for kids that have an IEP. But you're right, they are held to the same standard, but I think that one of the things that we had a mantra a couple of years ago when we were really working on improving student achievement was, we will modify and accommodate everything, but we will not modify the standard, because we know at the end of the day, our special ed students are held to the standard. So if I have to stand on one foot and teach this, you know, in a really dynamic or different way, I'll do that, but I won't change what the ultimate product is. And we had, you know, some really great success with not only our best and brightest kids, but also with our special needs students. And I'm hoping that we're going to follow, you know, do the same thing with the new standards and new assessment. So,
Sure.
but it is a struggle.
Jump to slide, you want to go back?
Oh, so there's just my goals is really to continue to work on and monitor, evaluate, adjust curriculum assessments, expand technology, and professional development. And that's kind of just my goals in general, what I do. And then how do we do it is the vehicles. And that's through faculty meetings, department meetings, professional development day sessions, our community of practice days, writing curriculum meetings, our curriculum task force, our professional development advisory committee meetings, our standards-based report card committees. We have quite a few systems and structures that are in place for people to meet and to really discuss. And a lot of these are volunteer, they're after school, and we get droves of teachers that really just take their time regularly to have the conversation. And so we have some systems and structures in place, and we're going to use them and have the conversations that we need to have. And I wanted to end with, let's keep in mind, and the first thing is that we really have an excellent track record, and so we know that we're starting with a new baseline, a new test, you know, new technology, but we're going to, we're going to take it all the way. The one and only way to improve student achievement is improving instruction. There's no way around it, and that's the delivery strategies, materials, technology, human resources. So we may need maybe a math interventionist. Sorry, just another bluff. We may need some technology or materials, but that's improving instruction. And we know that there's a ripple effect, and that when we improve student achievement, and we on a state assessment, then we'll see more students taking AP classes and higher SATs and more college-bound students. And so we'll see it all come together, and we have seen it come together. And so in the end, improving student achievement really creates opportunities for students. And so I just feel lucky to be able to do what we do, and I put my little graphic, keep calm, let's enjoy the ride, and I don't mean it sarcastically, I mean it like, let's really enjoy it. We're doing great things for kids. At the end of the day, they're going to be smarter, and we're going to be thrilled. So, that's it.
Hey, you threw it up there, I see SAT scores. Could you give me how we do?
So we do pretty well. We're above the national average. We get in the 500s, our average is, I'm going to say about, we were just looking at it yesterday, what was it down, like between 510 and 540 on reading, writing, and math.
We can
Which is
reissue
nice,
that.
solid.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, we can
And I
reissue
see
it.
college-bound students. I'm wondering how many kids graduate actually go on to school, go on to college.
About 80%.
About 80%?
Is that all on the high school profile that goes out with the transcript?
Yeah, we have it on the high school profile, it's also on the high school website in a number of places, but we can get you all.
So maybe we could each get a copy of the profile and
Yeah,
tell them more about the SAT.
Do you want the profile, or do you want a link to it directly? I can
Either.
send you either a
Whatever's
web
easy.
link, or I can send you the hard copy.
Yeah, save the tree, send the link.
Yeah, send the link.
We also, Bill also issued, I think it was back in the fall, the latest update on the SATs, and was really good, concise. I think it was one page. Is that part of the profile? If not, we'll.
No, it's separate, I can send that to you.
Yeah,
not a
it's
problem.
really worth looking at it again. Is that a child? So keep going. Is that from a child? It's okay.
So any questions?
Thank you.
Anytime anyone wants to meet, come around.